back. We're going strong here for our record-setting 18 hours of Torah learning to support Jewish education. Those who are just tuning in now for the morning shift, or what is the beginning of the night shift in Israel, we've had different exciting giveaways each hour for those that have been donating. The winner for the highest donor this hour, since it is our self-help hour, they're going to receive a box set of Tony Robbins CDs. Tony Robbins CDs this hour, a full, complete box set. We'll ship that to you right away if you're the winning donor in this hour. You can make your donations on longestshir.com, www.longestshir.com. You could watch us on the internet, longestshir.com, or you could watch us in person by coming down here. You could also text 41444, 41444, and text the word Torah and donate in that way as well. So we appreciate your support. Again, the highest donor this hour will win a full Tony Robbins box set CDs. We'll send those over to you. Okay, the topic for this hour is recovering our das, a manual for self-discovery. Recovering our das, a manual for self-discovery. What does it mean? What's that about? So the Baal Shem Tov has a famous statement in his commentary at the beginning of Sefer Shmos. It's famous because a few people have said similar ideas. It's really based on the teaching of the Arizal. And the idea is that b'Mitzrayim, das haya begalus, that in Mitzrayim, das was in exile. Literally translated, our minds were in exile. What does that mean, our minds were in exile? So I like to analyze that one line because from that one line comes so many, I think, beautiful teachings of what the Baal Shem Tov was trying to drive at. Because what are we supposed to picture? We're supposed to picture mindless people slaving away in Egypt. What does it mean that b'Mitzrayim, das haya begalus, that our minds, that our intellect was in galus? I think the first possible explanation is a lack of hakara. There's a lack of awareness. Maybe while we were in Egypt, we lost something valuable. What did we lose? We lost an identity of who we truly were, what we stood for, what our values for. You know, maybe our externals we kept. For example, the Medrash says, Lo shinu et shmam, lo shinu et malbusham. We didn't change our names. We didn't change our language. We didn't change what we wear. By the way, that's a big misnomer. I dare you to look for the Medrash that says that we did not change what we wore. The truth is you won't be able to find that Medrash anywhere because it doesn't exist. We know of it because it's quoted from different opinions. We know of it because it's quoted from different opinions who talk about this Medrash, but the truth is this Medrash is nowhere to be found. I looked high and low for this Medrash. I was about to give up on its existence until finally I asked Rabbi Cooperman of Michlala, who's an expert in biblical studies and biblical scholarship. Rabbi Cooperman had said that it does exist. It's from a fragment of a Medrash from the Cairo Geniza, which was a bunch of old documents that we have found. It exists there. All right, that's a tangent. My point being, again, let's regroup. What are we analyzing here? We're analyzing the concept of what it means that b'Mitzrayim das haya begalus. The Baal Shem Tov says that in Egypt, our minds were in exile. What does it mean our minds were in exile? So the first explanation I'm giving to that very esoteric line means that we lost an awareness of who we are, identity. You know, I don't think that's a far cry from where we are today. Externally, we may look Jewish. We may carry the trappings of what it may be to be a Jew, to wear a kippah, tzitzit, tzniut, all those things. But it's not about the externals as it is about the internals. Do we understand what we're here to do, what our values are, what we believe are the true ideals of what it means to stand as a tribe of Israel? Maybe that's what we lost in Egypt. You know, William Wadsworth said, habit rules the unreflecting herd. And after a while, you go through ritual and you go through habit and you lose the forest for the trees and you really lose what is the main idea of what we're really here about because we're so caught up in the details. At the Pesach Seder, we say, Avadim Hayinu, right? We were slaves to Paro. Avadim Hayinu leParo b'Mitzrayim. So Rav Soloveitchik asks, you know, grammatically, it would make more sense if it said, Avdei Paro Hayinu b'Mitzrayim. Avdei Paro Hayinu b'Mitzrayim. Why does it say Avadim Hayinu? So he says a very insightful thought. He says that even though the Jews served Paro, but that never became their identity, meaning avadim hayinu. You want to know what we did from 9 to 5? Well, 9 to 12, we were slaves. That's what we did. But you want to know who we were? That's not at our core who we really were as a people, what we stood for, what we were supposed to stand for. We never really allowed it to take over our entire identity, to become a slave mentality, a people with a slave mentality, a people who are victims, who can't lift themselves out of their situation. I heard a great analogy. It's a very New York analogy. It came from a rabbi in New York. There's the A train. Anybody who is from New York knows about the A train, which will take you basically from Washington Heights, where YU is, and take you right down to the bottom of Manhattan. So there was a guy who was on the A train that was going downtown, and he realized his mistake, and he wanted to go uptown. So he had an idea. If he faces the other direction on the train and walks that way, maybe it'll work. So what's the analogy? The analogy is in life, we think we're moving upwards, but it's to no avail. If the train is going downtown, you could turn around all you want. You could go through the motions, make it more tangible. I met someone the other week who is a follower of a big Hasidic rabbi. And he asked the Hasidic rabbi, I'm ready, I want to change my clothes to Hasidic garb. And the rabbi laughed at him and said, why would you do that? He goes, your generation thinks. Your generation thinks you tweak the outside and everything will just fix itself. That's just external what I wear on the outside. Development and true change, true empowerment comes from working on who you are as a person. The outside is maybe a support. It's a tool, but it doesn't change our identity and what we are. That comes from work that needs to be done on the inside. That needs to happen. So I think that's the first interpretation of what it means when the Baal Shem Tov says that b'Mitzrayim, das haya begolus, that our minds were in Egypt. We lost our values. We lost our compass, what we were about. Something called the Stockholm Syndrome, right? Who made Stockholm Syndrome famous, right? Patty Hearst. Patty Hearst was taken by the Simeonese Liberation Army. They kidnapped her. They beat her up enough till before you know it, there she was on the cover of the Times holding a gun in her hand. Stockholm Syndrome. What does Stockholm Syndrome mean? You totally become associated with the captor. After a while in Egypt, with enough of the beating and enough of the suffering and enough of the difficulties that we were facing, after a while, we went through this Stockholm Syndrome. And by the way, that's why we say that there's a question the Mabit asks, why'd they have to go through these plagues? Why couldn't God just pause the Egyptians, freeze the Egyptians for a couple minutes, and let the Jews walk out through the back door? Why did there have to be this whole decimation and annihilation of the people in Egypt? Why did it have to go through all of that extreme? The Mabit says something very insightful. He says the Jews were mentally, emotionally crippled at that time. They were. And the only time for them to break free from the mentality that they were in was to see the destruction of their oppressor. By the way, it's one of the therapies of Stockholm Syndrome. One of the modern suggested therapies of Stockholm Syndrome is to see the dismantling of the authority figure. That's why it was important for Amy Smart to be in court. She needed to see the dismantling of her authority figure. And that, says the Mabit, is what's happening here with the Jewish people. They needed to see the dismantling of those that did this to them. That's why it says in the Haggadah that if Ilu lo hatzianu Mitzrayim, if God would never have taken us out of Egypt, we still would have been slaves to Paro. What are we talking about? That's long gone. That Egyptian, the archaic Egyptian is long gone. It's been replaced by 47 governments in between. So what does it mean? It means that mentally we would have been a slave nation forevermore. And that's why, very interesting, the choice of words for the Torah. The Torah says that the Jews are leaving, Mishchu ukhu lachem tzon. Draw yourself out and take for yourself a sheep, a new korban. Why does it say Mishchu ukhu? Draw yourself out and take. So says Rav Hirsch, it's one thing to pull yourself away from your old values, but you can't just leave it blank. What do you replace it with? The absence of old values is sometimes worse than what the old values were. The vacuum. I mean, think about Iraq. The totally dismantling of Saddam Hussein's regime did not leave you with a peaceful state in between. The vacuum sometimes is replaced by even more chaos, and chaos sometimes can be more destructive. Mishchu ukhulachem. Pull yourself out. That's one thing, but you got to replace it with something else. So we lost our value system, and we needed to fix that. That's what it means. Das was in Golis. Something called virus of the mind that some of the self-help books have coined, or memes. Those are the messages that have been passed on to us like viruses that we bought into, and we allow them to form our identity. We carve our identity around those labels that people have told us, that you're not going to be the bright one in the family. You'll do something, you're not going to be that one. And we allow those labels to define our personality, and because of it, we lose what we truly are about, our identity. So that, I think, is the first explanation of the Baal Shem Tov's line that in Egypt, our minds were in exile. Let's give a second explanation. Maybe it's not about losing our identity, but we lost, das is like a focus. We lost our alignment. I would say shavisi. Shavisi means, when we say shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid, I place God in front of me at all times. Doesn't mean I'm thinking about God every single moment. That's obsessive compulsive. What it means is shavisi. There's an alignment between the way I live my life, between the way I speak, the way I deal with people in business and my friends. There's a great equalizer. There's a holistic, I would say, a holistic way in which I live my religion. That's shavisi. We're misaligned. Something is off. And it's not just about discovering who we really are, but living true to what we say we stand for. One of the great Catholic theologians, whose name was Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton, he said the following: the lesson of the story of Beauty and the Beast is that a thing must be loved before it is lovable. A person must be loved before that person can be lovable. Some of the most unlovely people I have known got that way because they thought that nobody loved them. That's a heavy idea. Some of the most terrible people we deal with are the people who in the first place never themselves thought they knew what love was. They themselves never felt the recipients of love. But one who has felt the recipient, has been on the receiving end of what love is, must have that alignment. They cannot be people who are loved and be mean to others. You don't have that. It's very unlikely you find someone who is, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says it, who is honored by the people? Those that honors other people. You feel loved by others, you're not going to turn on people because you feel what it's like to be loved by others. That's shavisi. That's alignment. There's a book by Yul Anderson, which is a metaphysics classic. It's called 3 Magic Words. And the whole book, you wait the whole book to find out what these 3 magic words are. And you're wondering the whole time, what exactly are these 3 magic words? And you get to the last paragraph, and he says the 3 magic words are, I am God. Now, he means it in a very New Age sense, that everybody has to see themselves as the, sort of God, and it's not outside of them. Very pantheistic view. But understand it on a very simple level. It's a very Jewish idea. When you see yourself as Tselem Elokim, created in a divine image, it begs of you to act differently. It turns to you and says, you must act differently than anybody else. If I understand that I am created in the image of God, then I can't disgrace other people. You understand what that means? If I understand that I am created in the image of God, and you are created in the image of God, then I can't treat you like garbage. If you understand that you walk within you with some type of image that comes to you from God, then how in the world could you treat others terribly? How could you speak terribly with nivel peh? How could you speak in that way? I saw a great analysis just 2 weeks ago of what it means to about Lashon Hara in general. We speak negatively about somebody else. So this scholar that I've been very into lately, Rav Avram Tzvi Kluger, he says, what a fallacy Lashon Hara is. It's such a fallacy. You know why? You know what Lashon Hara is? Lashon Hara is about judging somebody else, talking negatively about somebody else. You know why you recognize something bad in somebody else? How did you detect that what somebody else said was bad or no good? You know why? Because you got it somewhere in you. There's some part of you that does the same exact thing. And that's why you're telling everyone in town, this guy's a lowlife, you know what he does? He does this and that. You know why you knew it to bother you? Because there's a part of you that has that ability. I mean, the Baal Shem Tov says that. The Baal Shem Tov says, you look at someone else and they're ugly, it's, as Shlomo says, Gewalt, why are you ugly? It's because there's an ugliness that you recognize that you're seeing in somebody else, that you're reflecting. And I think that's what it means, that when Baal Shem Tov says that Das was in Gullus, he means there's a lack of shavisi. You're not living truthfully. If you acknowledge that you're created in a divine image, How could you project negatively onto other people? It's not possible. You're not living aligned. You're not living aligned. It says they couldn't listen to Moshe Mitzrayim. Why? Mi avodah kasha, mi kotzer ruach, mi avodah kasha, from shortness of spirit. What's the shortness of spirit? I think it's this. Kotzer ruach is where you can't think straight. You can't operate when you're tired. It's hard to be your best when you're tired. Why? Because you're not aware of this sensitivity. That how could I be terrible to someone? I'm created in the divine image. Or, as Chesterton said before, I've been loved. How could I not love others? I've been loved in my life. How can I not love others? They did not acknowledge that they had. You see, Kotzer Ruach is the opposite of a Yipach Be'apav, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blew into us Ruach Chaim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu blew into us a breath of life from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kotzer Ruach is when we don't feel that. Those moments when we don't feel godly. You know when you smack your head on a table and then you trip and then you spill the drink on your pants and then for that moment, there's a moment of kotzer ruach. You don't feel like a godly being as you're walking around then. And that's when you get frustrated. And you take out that frustration on others because you don't feel that expansiveness that comes to being a creature of God, someone created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I would take this further. That's the concept of kavanah in davening. Think of the word kavanah. So do you have kavanah? What's kavanah? The word kavanah comes from the Hebrew shorish kivun. Kivun is direction. So you could say kavanah means direction because I have to face the direction of Yerushalayim. But it's regardless. Even someone facing Yerushalayim, you still ask, do you have kavanah in your prayer? Why? Because it's not about the direction of where you physically face. It's about the direction of, are you aligned with the words you're saying? You're sitting there with a sitter, and you're talking about how I want to be a better person. I want to grow. Slach lanu, God forgive me, I did this stuff to people. Are you saying it, or you buy into it? I saw a beautiful insight from the Nikolsburg Rebbe. The Nikolsburg Rebbe says we say the prayer by slichus, and we said it this past week, by slichus, we say Shema Kolenu. God, listen to our voice. Shema Kolenu. Says the Nikolsburg Rebbe, it's a nice moving tefillah. People begin to feel davening a little bit when you say out loud Shema Kolenu. He says, but it doesn't get off the ground if you don't know what your voice even is. If you haven't listened honestly to what your own voice, what do you really want? What do you really, God, listen to my voice. Did you stop for a moment and say, well, what is my voice asking for? I don't even know what my voice is. I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what I'm feeling is a lack in the world. That's the idea. Our misalignment is because we have no room for Hashem. We have no room for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives. You know, the Katzker says, where is God? God is wherever you make room for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's wherever you make room. You know, the Noam Elimelech, this is a deep thought, but we'll get through it. The Noam Elimelech has such a nice insight. He says in the back of the Noam Elimelech, he has a section called Lekutei Shoshanim. It's smaller tidbits, and some of them are more difficult to understand than others, but here's the idea. He's talking about the Hallel. For those who say the Hallel, you know the phrase, Zeh hashar la Hashem, right? Pischu li sharei tzedek, open for me the gates of righteousness. Okay, let's take it slow. Pischu li sharei tzedek, open for me the gates of righteousness. Zeh hashar la Hashem, that's the gate to God. Tzadikim yavo uvo, the righteous will go that way. Says the Noam Elimelech, what's the gate to Hashem, right? I'll say the line again. Pischu li sharei tzedek, open for me the gates of righteousness. That's the gate to Hashem. Tzadikim will go there. What's the gate? We haven't labeled the gate yet. The gates of righteousness is the gate. What does this mean? We're saying Hallel. How many times a year we say Hallel? We don't know what the line means. The Noam Elimelech has such a nice explanation. You know what the gate is to God? The gate is Pischu li, it's called Pischu li sharei tzedek. That's the gate to Hashem. What does that mean? God opened for me the gate. What do you mean God opened for me? God opened for me the gate is the line we say when we begin to acknowledge that we don't know anything. That's the gates of the righteous. God opened for me. I don't, you know, you tell someone to study Jewish books, they think there's a few books and you got it. And the irony is the more you learn, the more you realize you're not even touching the tip of the iceberg. The second you go further and further in, the further you realize how much and how nothing you know. How little and insignificant is the work that you've done. That feeling of I'm getting nowhere, says no Melimelech, that's the beginning of growth. Now you're finally ready to begin. The moment you've given up and said, I don't know everything, welcome home, God says. Peacefully, Shari Tzedek. God, open for me the gates of righteousness. I don't know what I'm doing. You understand? That's the gate the righteous ones go on. What do you mean that's the ones they go on? They've already gotten in, no? No. They only get in once they say, I don't know. I mean, I give this analogy. I used to take in 7th grade, Shaolin Kung Fu. I took a Shaolin Kung Fu class, and the guy the first day pulled me over, Sifu Wong, pulled me over and he showed me a cup half full with water. And he said, this is your mind today. And then he emptied it and said, come back tomorrow and cup empty. Meaning what he was telling me is I had to get to a point where I realized I don't know anything about Shaolin. If I admit I know nothing about Kung Fu, now I'm ready to learn. Once I make space, then you're ready to begin to learn. The way Rebbe Nachman says it is beautiful. It simplifies it. You have to get to a level where you maven she'eno maven, where you're willing to acknowledge, to understand that you don't understand. That's a madrega. Jews love to think they know it all. They figured it all out. Rabbi Nachman says, please, you need to get up. You know what the highest level is? Where you could finally acknowledge that you don't know anything. Once you begin to be honest with yourself and begin to be real and say, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why you would emphasize this God. I don't know why Jewish law says that. Once you finally begin to ask those questions, Rabbi Nachman says, now you're living honestly. Now you're living, you're real, you're authentic. You're authentic. You know, this wasn't just the Yetzias Mitzrayim. Remember, the word Mitzrayim is from Mitzarim, boundary. Leaving Egypt wasn't just for the Jewish people, it was for Moshe. What did Moshe say at the beginning? Ani aral svasayim. God, how can I go to Paro? I have a difficult tongue. You want me to speak to Paro? Ani aral svasayim. In the end, when God asks him to speak before the people, when it comes to the land of Israel, he doesn't question God. He changes. At the beginning, he was someone who questioned everything. God, in me, I'm going to do this? Ani aral svasayim? The Moshe at the end is a much different Moshe. He doesn't ask those questions anymore because he also had a Yetzias Mitzrayim. He had an alignment that if God is calling him to do this, then of course he could do it. If God is asking you to do it, it must be that you're capable of doing it. So let's review. We're analyzing what the Baal Shem Tov means based on that Rizal. What he means when he says that when Mitzrayim, our das, our mind was in Gullus. In das, in exile, in Egypt, our mind was in exile. Our first pshat that we gave, you know what it means? It means that we lost an awareness of who we are. We lost an awareness of who we truly are. The second shot we gave is, it's not about that, but rather it's something else. But rather it's about not awareness, but rather we're misaligned. We're not acknowledging that we're missing something. You know, it's like two opposites of the same coin. It's what Chazal referred to as one side as Bishvili Nivra Olam. The Jew has to acknowledge the world was created for me. I have a holy mission. I am called to do something amazing. That's that first lesson. That's realizing that we have a great mission. But the Jew also has to live with the other side of the coin, which is acknowledging, I'm a nobody. I'm nothing. I've got nothing figured out. I've got so much more to go. Let's go with a third pshat now and what it means that Das was in Gullus. What does it mean that in Egypt, our minds were in exile? Maybe it means we were not present. We were never present. We're always worried about what's going to be tomorrow. Or we're opposite people. We're always talking about what happened to us yesterday. You know, you meet some of those people that are so angry about Judaism still. Why? Because there's something that happened to them with a rabbi back in 4th grade. Right? They're complaining about there was a Rebbe who screamed at me once when I was in 4th grade, or he embarrassed me in front of the class when I had this. You know what? Look around. Everybody else has moved on with their life. You're still holding on to that incident in 4th grade. You're still holding on to that anger that happened 15 years ago. Eckhart Tolle has a beautiful way of describing someone who's busy always with the future and busy with the past. He says, imagine a guy who falls in the mud. A guy who falls in the mud, some people are busy stuck in the past. What a fool I was for falling in the mud. What a moron I was for falling in the mud. A guy who's future focused is always worried about how am I going to look like when I get out of here from the mud. Either one of those perspectives paralyze you from dealing with the situation as it is right now. The situation as it is right now is not bad. Bad is only a construct of your being hung up on the past or the future. You're just a guy in the mud right now, right? Try anything you'll say. My pants are dirty? Why is that bad? That's a problem when you get out. The fact that I was a fool and tripped, that's a problem in the past. Right now, it's just you in the mud. When you could stay focused on the present situation, you could finally deal with your issues. I would say the third pshat and what this means, the Jews das were in exile, is they were not focused on what was right now. There's a beautiful tshuva from the Radvaz. Radvaz is Rav David ben Zimra. He's a 15th century, it was 1390s, 14th century, 15th century Spanish posek. He dealt with some hardcore issues because then many of the inquisitions and the conversions were taking place of getting Jews to become Christians. So he dealt with a lot of difficult questions. So he says like this, he had a question that came before him where a prisoner was asked that the warden has given him 1 day to step out of prison. 1 day to pray. What day should he go to pray with his people? And the Radvaz goes back and forth. There's even a Chacham Tzvi on the same tshuva that maybe you should leave Yom Kippur. One opinion was maybe Purim. Let him have a festive day. Let him have some simcha in his life. Let him have some joy. And he's going back and forth. When should he go? The Radvaz answers, you know when he should go? Right now. The present moment. There's no more powerful moment than the present opportunity. That's what it means on Pesach when we say Chayev Adam Liras Es Atzmo Kihilu Yotzim Mitzrayim. Right, a person's obligated on Pesach night to see themselves as leaving Egypt right now. See, if your Jewish ceremonies are strictly ceremonies commemorating incidents from a long time ago, we have a problem. Then Judaism's got to move on because you're stuck in the past. The past is the past. It happened already. Right, whatever the line is, the past is the past, the future is tomorrow, is the present, whatever it is. You're stuck in that thing. Okay, you're stuck over there. Chasam Sofer says a very beautiful idea. He says, why don't we make a bracha on the telling of the exodus from Egypt at the beginning of the Seder? Like every mitzvah, you always make a bracha before the mitzvah. At the beginning, he says, you know why? Because at the beginning of the Seder, we're supposed to feel like we are now enslaved. In whatever area of our lives, we are enslaved. Whether it's to our careers, whether it's to our limitations, whether to whatever we try to work on, we are enslaved. It's not a time for a bracha. But when you get to B'tzeis Yisrael Mimitzrayim, when you get to further in the Haggadah, and you've begun to think about right now, I am not enslaved. Right now at this moment, my mind is free. As, what's his name said? Viktor Frankl said, the one thing I realized while I was with the Nazis, the one thing I realized they could take away everything, but they can't take away my mind. That they cannot take away. Right? My ability to think freely. Once a Jew realizes that, at B'tzeis Yisrael Mitzrayim, then we're ready for the bracha. Asher goalnu v'goal asab mitzrayim. That's why in the middle of the Haggadah, you finally make the bracha, says the Chasam Sofer, because it's about being present. It's about being present. Rav Soloveitchik once said, what's the difference between a free person and a slave? A slave is in control of his time. In evidence of that is the halacha that he's pater from all mitzvahs asay shazman grama. He's pater from all time-bound mitzvahs because he has no relationship to time. Time is not his to dictate. He has no appreciation of it. Rav Soloveitchik also noted, he said it's interesting, the Industrial Revolution totally passed the Chinese by. Right? They were many years behind us. You know that for a while back, the Chinese were moving rapidly, and they totally slowed down. From the period of around 1100 till around the 1800s, the Chinese are like in a total freeze frame. Why? So Rav Soloveitchik argued that the Western culture had a belief that time is money. Their conceptual definition of time is that you got to get moving, you got to get busy moving. Time is money. Come on, let's get things done. That fostered, that sort of encouraged or edged along a revolution. The Chinese, during the Middle Ages, measured time via drops of sand. Every little drop is just another grain of sand, dropping and dropping and dropping. The same idea you could see in the book Intellectuals by Paul Johnston, that each drop of sand is another, there's no rush, there's no need, there's no imperative. There's no rush for me to get anything productive done. And the Chinese for many years relied on the teachings of Lao Tzu, which was a very pacifist understanding of time. Time is like water. Don't try to move it too harsh. Flow with it. Meditation develops and blossoms in Eastern Asia. HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem for the Jewish people dictated how we understood time. What's HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem? It was the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, to understand that we can shape what we do with time. We have the ability to add extra minutes onto the Shabbos. Shabbos is dictated by the Torah, how long it is. What do you mean we could add on to the Shabbos? You can keep it going for hours, Saturday night. Who are you to add on to it? God told you what Shabbos is. What are you doing? Because God gave us the ability, with HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, the ability to add on to the Shabbos. The Beis Din, The Beis Din sanctifies the month. If the witnesses farblunja and mess it up, and they get the wrong day for Yom Kippur, according to Jewish law, that is still Yom Kippur. You know what? That's still Yom Kippur. You don't do it over. How do you not do it over? The Torah has a clear date for Yom Kippur. Human beings messed up the date. God says, I don't care. HaChodesh hazeh lechem. I gave you the calendar. Calendar's not mine. I put it in your hands. Deal with it. You worry about it. HaChodesh hazeh lechem. There's a great Gemara of Rabbi Elazar ben Dordaya. Rabbi Elazar ben Dordaya, whose name wasn't originally Rabbi Elazar ben Dordaya, it was originally just Elazar ben Dordaya. Gemara in Avodah Zarah talks about him, how he used to frequent all the brothels in the world, looking for the best one. He would go from town to town, looking for the biggest one, best one possible. And then the Gemara says he found one he heard about, Bekarche Hayam. He found one, some island somewhere. So he schlepped out to the island to go there. And while he's there, there's two versions of the Gemara. One, the tzitzis hit him in the face. Another one, something else happened to him. And then the woman he's with tells him that that just as that happened to you can never be taken back, what you've done in your life can never be taken back. And he freaks out. That's like a wake-up call. If the woman in the brothel's telling him that is already telling him he's a shegitz, you know you have trouble. So he woke up from that. And he ran. He runs outside. And the Gemara says he runs to the trees, and he says to the trees, "Please pray for my soul." And the trees say, "We got our own issues, baby. We can't pray for you." He goes to the mountains and he says, "Please pray for my soul." The mountain says, "We're busy with our own mishagas. We don't have time for you." Then he turns to the stars in the sky and he says, "Please pray for me." And the stars in the sky say, "Nothing doing." And then all of a sudden it says he put his head between his legs and he let out a huge cry. And it says, Yesh kona olamo b'sha'achas. Some people acquire their world to come in a moment. What does that mean? A strange Gemara. He's running around, he's crying. It's a very strange Gemara. So I thought a possible interpretation could be the following. He went to the trees. What are the trees? The trees are our surroundings, our environment. He wanted to blame his environment. It's not my fault I'm like this. This is the surrounding I'm in. These are the people I'm around. They're low lives. What do you want from me? That's what I am. The tree said, don't pin this on us. Then he went to the mountains and he started crying. What are the mountains? Esa einai elaharim. It's the avos. What we come from. It's not my fault. It's my parents' fault. He was in therapy. I'm like this because of my parents. They messed me up big time. That's why I'm like this. The mountain said, don't blame us for this. Then he went to the stars in the sky. What are the stars in the sky? The stars in the sky are the genetics, are the destiny. It was predetermined. This is what it was. This was God's. This is what you wanted from me, God. This is what's predetermined. I have no choice. I have no free will. The star says, don't blame this on us. At that moment, only the moment he realized, right then and there, it's all up to me. Change is all up to you accepting the moment as is and beginning a course of action of changing that free spin, that tailspin that you're in and turning the trajectory. That's what real change is all about. You know, this is why immediately after leaving Egypt, right away, you have so many great events. You have the splitting of the sea. You have Har Sinai. You have the Mishkan, one after another. Contrast that with the 210 years the Jews were in slavery. Nothing happened. Tell me some stories from those 210 years. Nothing. We have one where the wife of a Jew was with an Egyptian. That's it. We have no other story from those 210 years. Because during the slave years, there was no concept of time. Time meant nothing. Night and day blended into one another. It was meaningless. But now when they were given the first mitzvah of the Torah, given to the Jews, of HaChodesh hazeh lechem, time is yours. We wanted to make the most of it. And since then, Jews have never stopped looking back. Jews are always busy. We're always moving around, coming, going. Jews are always the most busy people ever we are. I mean, non-Jews look at us like we're crazy. We're always running around. We always have to be busy with something. But I think it ties into that we've developed, that HaChodesh hazeh lechem sensibility, that everything needs to move, everything needs to go. There's a sensitivity to time and what the present moment can do for us, and no better minute than right now. So let's review. We talked about the Baal Shem Tov's line that in Mitzrayim, Das was in Gullus. What does that mean? Our minds were in exile. We're like zombies, mummies? No. We gave 3 pshatim so far. 3 pshatim so far. So pshat number 1. Pshat number 1 is as follows. Number 1, we said it means that, let's review. It's hard to think lucidly now. Number 1 means that, put mine here. It's good. Oh my gosh, that was geschmack. All right. Number one, I said the first pshat of what it means, das was in Gullus, is it means a lack of hakara. We had a lack of awareness of who we really are. Bishvili nivra olam. The world was created for me. I was destined for greatness. What our identity was. The second pshat was almost the opposite of what does it mean our das was in Gullus. It means at the same time we have to acknowledge that we're living misaligned. We're not living the way we should. We don't know everything. Anochi afar ve'efer. It was the pshat of the Noam Elimelech, that realization of the Noam Elimelech of that's Pischuli Sharei Tzedek, open for me the gates of righteousness. What's the gates of righteousness? Where you have to finally say, God, open for me the gates. I have no clue where I'm going. That's finally the beginning of change. That's living aligned. The third idea was what we just developed, was the idea of living in the present moment, Hayom. That's what it means das was in Gullus. We had no appreciation of time. Time meant nothing as a slave. Now finally with Chodesh Zelachem, a Jew can appreciate what it means every moment, what a minute means. Let's go to a fourth possible pshat of what it means when the Baal Shem Tov uses the teaching of the Arizal that das was in Gullus. There's a beautiful story of Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. Rebbe Nachman, we could spend we could do a whole 18 hours just on the story of Rebbe Nachman. I'd love to see an intellectual analysis of Rebbe Nachman's stories. Rabbi Alstein, if you have any free moments to write another book, we'll see. So the Lost Princess is one of Rebbe Nachman's greatest, and it's a story of a king who gets upset at his daughter, and that morning he wakes up only to find her missing, and he regrets it so much that he never got a chance to say goodbye, and he's upset and she's gone, and he sends out the viceroy to go find the princess. And it's really a big analogy for recovering the part of us that we lost. To find the part of us that's been lost, whether you want to understand the story as referring to the lost art of Kavanah or the lost art of being a passionate Jew. There's a great, I recommend, you jogged my memory, I recommend if those who haven't seen the Klal Journal. The Klal Journals are amazing. Ralston, one of the editors in the journal, right? So there's a Klal Journal on passion in Judaism. I think it was the first one. One of those in there, but about recovering passion in Judaism. So maybe that's what the Lost Princess is about. We've lost the soul. There's a great story from Rab Simcha Bunim of Peshischa about a guy who was charged with of watching a fancy horse. Let's modernize the story. About a guy who was hired to watch someone's new, Tesla. Right? He's charged, you're going to watch my Tesla. It's in the garage. That's your one job. So he's sitting there watching the Tesla, and he comes and knocks on the door of the head of the household and says, I have a question. While I was sitting here, I was just wondering, how do they get those holes inside of the bagel? Where do the holes go? And the head of the house says, you nuts? What are you asking over here? He goes, I don't know. They form the dough, and I don't know. Okay, fine. He goes back. He's sitting there. He's watching the Tesla. He's thinking, and then he asks a series of klutz kashas about, are there stars in the sky, or are those holes in the curtain of night, or are there stars in the sky? He says, that's what you're busy with? Let me go back to sleep. What are you asking me? Then he goes and asks a third question, and he turns and he says, I was always wondering, why do all the manholes have to be round? Why can't they be square? What's he asking me? Finally he says, one last question. He goes, do you know where the Tesla went that was in the garage? And the story is, Rav Simcha Bunim Pshischa is Eich Ne'elam Hasus. How did we lose the horse? We've been so busy with everything else that we lost the ikr, we lost the soul, we lost the passion, we lost the heart. And in a pivotal moment in the story, right when the viceroy is about to give up, he has nowhere to look anymore. He finds a shvil minatzad, a path to the side, and that'll ultimately lead him to the princess. So what does it mean he finds a path to the side? So in Rabbi Nassan, Rabbi Nachman's student, Rabbi Nassan's understanding of the story, the shvil minatzad is a reference to meditation. That sometimes when your tefillah isn't working, you need a new way. You need a fresh way to awaken your tefillah. And what was his new way? His new way was to meditate, to just to think and to speak to God directly. And maybe that's what the Jews lacked in Gullus. What it meant was the Jew lost their das in Gullus in Egypt, was they lost their das in the sense they weren't connecting with Hashem anymore. They didn't have that hisbonenus, that contemplation, that being with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe is a beautiful line. The Rebbe says a Jew lives with the concept of knowing they always have to find another way. When you think you're locked out, a Jew always has to find another way. By the way, it doesn't mean like Jews do nowadays. Whenever there's no more reservations left at the restaurant, a Jew finds a way. They call someone, they find a way to get in. That's not what the Katzker meant. The Katzker meant in life, when something feels closed to you, you got to find another way. The Sefer Tshuvas Chen from Rav Gedalia of Lenitz. He was a disciple, a lesser known disciple of the Mezritcher Maggid. Rav Gedalia of Lenitz says that the 50 gates of wisdom, the Nun Share Chachma spoken about in Kabbalah, are the same 50 gates of tshuva, 50 ways to return to Hashem. And he says 6 of them were made clear by the Arizal. The 50th gate, if you can get it, is the main feature. And the way to get to the 50th gate, he says, is to dig a tunnel under the Kisei HaKavod, is to dig a tunnel right under the God. What that means is you've tried every way. It's not working anymore. You try and you try and you try and you're not feeling connected. He says sometimes you have to cry out for the shortcut. Haba b'machteret. Find the way to dig under, the shortcut back to God. Meaning, says Rav Gedalia of Lenitz, that explains this whole business with the 49 levels of Tumah in Egypt. What does it mean the Jews had 49 levels of Tumah? They had no way of connecting anymore. You know, go back, if you were here at the 3 a.m. slot, we talked about, if you're at the 3 a.m. slot, we talked about famous Hasidic stories. So there was that one Hasidic story, which I think expresses this nicely, about in the times of the Baal Shem Tov, he used to go out to the forest with a candle. He knew a certain place with a specific candle, and a specific tefillah, and he had all his tefillahs answered. Then in the time of the Choz of Lublin, he no longer had the candle, but he had the place in the forest, and he had the tefillah, and that was good enough. And then you went a little further to the Rupshitzer and his place in the forest. He didn't know where the place was anymore, but at least the Rupshitzer still had the tefillah, and that was good enough. Rav Yisrael of Vigen says, now we don't know where the place is anymore. We don't have the candle, and we don't even know what the prayer they used in their time was anymore. We've lost the tefillah. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we still have this story, and that has to be good enough. That, I think, is what Rav Gedalia Lenitz means when he says at a certain point, a Jew has to just find that tunnel, that way back. You know, it says when Moshe Rabbeinu was fighting with the Mitzri, it says, Vayifen ko v'cho vayar ki einish. So I saw a beautiful shot from Rav Nathan Lopez Cordoza. He always has a great way of, just different way of looking at things we've always looked at. You know what it means, Vayifen ko v'cho? He looked this way and that way and saw v'yar kienish and saw there was nobody there. You know what it means? It means Vayifen ko. Moshe looked at his past as an Egyptian. Vayifen ko, and he looked this way of his possible future as a Jew. V'yar kienish, and he saw that until he takes a stand on who he really is, he's no man. He's nobody. You're a nobody until you decide, what am I about? And that's contemplating, that's speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's seeing Hashem in our lives, that's taking the tunnel, even though everything's not perfect. The Mabit says we have to teach our children about tshuva lechatzayin. What does that mean? Partial tshuva. We tend to beat ourselves up and tell ourselves that if we don't, it's all or nothing game. I'm terrible in this area and that area. I've done some bad things in my life. I have no way of connecting to God. The Mabit says it's very important for the next generation to understand that even if you're not perfect in a whole bunch of areas, there's still something to be said for partial tshuva. And that's the idea of just finding a connection to Hashem. And I think that explains what it means now when the Jews were leaving Egypt. Ra'a shivcha alayam, mashalo ra Yecheskel ben Buzi. The average maidservant saw at the sea what Ezekiel could not see. It means they finally felt what it meant to recover a contemplative connection back with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what it means that in Mitzrayim, Das was in Golus. We were nothing. We had no relationship. We had nothing to do with Hashem. There was no outlet for it. There was no minyan. There was no shul. There was no svarim. There was nothing. How do you create a relationship with God in the absence of anything being there? And that's what they began to realize as they were leaving Egypt. I want to give, let's see how much more time left. I want to give one more pshat in what it means that while the Jews were in Egypt, Das was in Gullus. Their minds were in exile. What does it mean their minds were in exile? I want to suggest what it means is they lost the will. You know, Das. What's Das? So there's at the top of the Kabbalah hierarchy, for those who are at the 5 a.m. shiur, there's Chabad. Chabad stands for Chachma, Bina, and Das. Wisdom, insight, and Das. What are the three? What's the difference? They sound the same, just different words to say the same thing. So a basic way of explaining it is Chachma is that flash of inspiration when an idea hits you, but you're not really sure yet what it looks like. Bina is when you clarify the idea, and Das is now when you apply it to the project you're working on. Chachma, Bina, Das. Rebbe Nachman says, by the way, that's why we're supposed to do Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum. We're supposed to review the Parsha twice and then do Targum. So Rebbe Nachman says the real order is supposed to be you do the Parsha once, you do the Targum, and then you do the Parsha. Why? Because the first time is Chachma. The information is just hitting you. Then you use Targum because that's a clarification. That's Bina. Now you're ready to go back to the reading, and now you could really apply it. That's Das. So Das is the will to take what's hitting you. It's will. It's the will to be able to extrapolate what you've learned and now apply it into your life. We all learn things, but do we make our lives better because of it? Do we do anything with it? It comes to us and it's gone the next moment. So the fifth pshat and what it means that the Jews' minds were in Gullus when they were in Egypt means they lacked a willpower, a basic ratzon. There's a beautiful piece in the Alei Shor by Rav Volbe. It used to be that if you wanted to get a copy of Alei Shor, you had to knock on Rav Volbe's door to get a copy. You wanted to make sure it's going in the right hand. It went into the right hands. So I got my copy Alei Shor, and I wanted to meet the guys who were rejected. Do we ever know the group of the guys who were rejected from the Alei Shor? So I got the copy of the Alei Shor, and the first piece I ever remember learning in the Alei Shor was such an amazing piece. You'll never forget the first piece you learn in a great sefer. And that was on the power of Ratzon, willpower. Willpower. He quoted a passage from the Vilna Gaon that Ratzon is a koach kabirhu. It's a mighty koach. It's a mighty koach, your willpower. He says it's a scary koach. You know why? Because it lets you know what a person, you can look at a person and you can know exactly what they want. Meaning, if you see a person who doesn't do much, has done nothing with their life, it lets you know a little bit of what they wanted. Why? It works backwards. Because if Ratzon is so powerful, if Ratzon is so strong, 9 times out of 10, they would have achieved it. They would have gotten it, right? If somebody wants something bad enough, they really would have achieved it. They would have gotten it. The fact that they don't have that in their life means they never really wanted it. If you really wanted to create the change that you're whining about, you really would have worked on it. I love the analogy of Larry Bird, who shot 500 shots a day from when he was a little kid. The man willed himself into being a great player. Now, I could have done all the shots I want in my life. There was no way Einhorn was becoming a basketball player. But you get the idea that Ratzon within a certain range is a tremendous power. You can envision what you want and go for it. There's a beautiful illustration, I forgot where I saw this, about how Michelangelo created David. When you think about it, Michelangelo looked at a chunk of rock. He looked at a big chunk of rock, and in there, he envisioned that David is going to be in that. That's what Ratzon. That's a great analogy for Ratzon. It's envisioning from where we're tabula rasa. We're a blank slate. We're just a clean slate. God creates us with certain netias, certain capabilities, certain dispositions, and from that we can mold something amazing. That's what Ratzon really is. Its answer lies in the possibility of seeing potential. Rav Hirsch has a beautiful explanation of the word ha'ivrim, the Hebrews. He says that language is used only once, ha'ivrim. He points this out in his commentary to Perek Gimel Pasuk Yud Chet. Rav Hirsch says the language is used when Moshe is told to speak to Paro. Moshe is told to speak to Paro. He is to go to Paro and let him know that we each are in Ivri, that we each mamish are in Ivri. What does that mean? Just like Avram stood on one side of the river against the world, we too have this courage. Each of us, not just one, each of us are Ivri. Each of us Jews are created with that ability to stand up and fight against the tide. When everybody is screaming at us, this is right, this is right. I mean, you hear the voices of, and it gets to you. You read enough about the atrocities, the war atrocities of Israel and what the Jews do. It takes a strong voice to be able to stand up and say, that's not who we are. That's what it means to be an Ivri. To have the courage to stand against what is the current trend, to be able to stand up, to be a reservoir of courage, like Rav Hirsch says. That's what it really means to be an Ivri. To stand against, Rav Yashiv has a beautiful interpretation. The Mishnah in Kedushin talks about a parent's responsibility to a child. And one of the opinions is that a parent must teach a child to swim. Swim. There's thousands of things. A parent could teach a Jew how to invest, how to do this, how to do that. Why is swimming on there? So Rav Yashiv says, you know what it means? That the parent must teach a child, a Jewish child, you have to learn how to swim against the tide. When everybody's telling you, this is the value, this is what's right, and forcing it down your throat, a Jew has to be able to stand up and say, no, that's not what I believed. That's not healthy for the world. That's not going to be best for what's right for the world and humanity. That's what it means when a parent has to teach a child how to swim. There's been thousands of divrei Torah on the famous passage in the Gemara, Kasha lezivugin kriyas yamsuf. The setting up of a shidduch is as difficult as kriyas yamsuf. So what does that mean? I saw a nice word from the Alexander Rebbe. The Alexander Rebbe says, you know what it means, kasha lezivugin? He takes the word kasha literally. What do we mean when we say, ask me a kasha? Ask me a kasha, right? So what it means, ask me a kasha, means the question that people have by shidduchim. What's going to be, God? The answer is like the one by Kriyas Yamsuf. The Jews ask the same question. God, what's going to be? You got to jump in. What's going to be? Sometimes you got to jump in, says the Alexander Rebbe. Stop asking so many questions. Just jump in. That's nothing to do with our, that's just side. Okay. So what's pshat in kasha l'sivugin kriyas yamsuf? So I saw a powerful teaching from the Chalban, the milkman who I've quoted before. The milkman says, in the Kabbalah Shiur, you heard a little bit about him. The milkman says the fear of water is its beauty. The fear of water is its beauty. When you mamish look at an ocean and you're filled with fear, trepidation, especially when you're on it, that's what beauty is. You see its awe. It's what we called ayom v'nora. It's awesome. It's incredible. And it's our will to even still jump into it and to keep getting up. That's what restoring das in Gullus means. Getting our mind back means getting our courage back, getting our essence back. The line, Mishlei says, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. That tzadik falls 7 times and he gets back up. A classic piece from Rav Hutner. Rav Hutner says, it's not just telling you a reality, that a tzaddik may fall 7 times and get up. It's telling you that essential to the development and the growth of a great person is that we fall. We learn from our falls. We learn what it means to will yourself back up off the couch, back up off the floor. You learn what it means to really be a Jew, to pick up the piece. You look at the survivors after the Shoah, how they built a school like this, how they built institutions. I can't imagine wanting to do anything after you walk out of the Shoah. And yet these people picked up their lives and they decided, we can't sleep, things need to be done. That's Ratzon. That's restoring Das after Gullus. You know, the Wright brothers, the first ones to fly, no one flew before them. The Wright brothers imagined themselves off the ground. They had the picture in their head of them being off the ground, and they came off the ground. That's what it means restoring Das from Gullus. We've looked at 5 pshatim here. What does it mean to have Das in Gullus? The Jews had Das in exile. To review it, we said the first pshat is we had a lack of awareness of our power, of what we truly are. Bishvili nivra olam. The world was created for us. Then we gave an opposite, second pshat, and that was we were misaligned. We didn't realize that we didn't know. Sometimes you're so oblivious to the fact that you don't realize that you don't know anymore. We need to get to a level of maven she'eno maven, that you understand that you don't know, and you need to ask questions, and you need to ask for help. Then we said the third understanding is that we weren't present anymore, living in the present moment. There's no greater day to change and to daven than the present moment right now. The fourth pshat we ended up suggesting was about contemplation. We stopped having a relationship with Hashem. We stopped just having a casual dialogue with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ra shivcha alayam. And the fifth pshat was the pshat of having a ratzon, having a willpower, right? Having a willpower. The courage, the strength, the power to envision and to imagine something bigger and better for ourselves and doing it. I'll close, as we got 2 minutes left in the shiur, I'll close with the following idea. Shal nalecha me'al raglecha ki hamakom asher ta'omed alav admas kodeshu. Remove the shoes from your feet because where you stand is holy ground. The Kalev Rebbe, when I saw him, told me that line. So I started taking off my shoes. And he says, no, stop. He says, I want to tell you Dvar Torah. And the Dvar Torah was Shal nalecha. release the shackles. Na'al is a lock in Hebrew. If you realize ki ha'makom asher ata omed alav, if you realize that wherever you stand in life is holy ground, admas kodeshu, you're free. You can do whatever it is you need to get done in life. And that really is the message in Egypt. Our das was in Golis. We lost that knowledge and that capability to realize we are capable of so much. I thank you so much. We are at the end of this shiur. Those who are following online, longestshir.com. We're doing this to support this Mishagas we're doing to support Jewish education. You could donate either by texting me at 41444. Text the word Torah and we'll send you the instructions. We got some more to go. Those who are here with us live, we invite you as though to join as well. We're going to move now into a more comfortable setting, Mirz Hashem, as we make our way to the end. Look forward to seeing you in a couple minutes.